Okay, we're good to go? Okay, actually we're starting just a couple minutes late, but we'll go ahead and, no worries. Get the engineering committee of July 14th underway. So the first item would be public comment on items that are within the purview of the committee, but items that we're not going to be talking about today. So is there any public comment from anyone? And is it star 9? Star 9 if you want to raise your hand. On the phone. Seeing none, so we'll go ahead and move to item number 1, which is engineering committee minutes from the last meeting, which was June 9th. The directors have any comments? Okay. Any comments from the public with regards to item number 1? Nope. Nope. Okay. We'll put the minutes and move on to item number 2, which is the project status report. There's a couple of items that we'll have a little longer discussion, so as we get to them, we can either kind of do it right then. If we want, we can wait to the end and then go out 2 or 3 items that we want to have a further discussion on. So we'll just kind of play that by ear as we move forward, if that's okay with the committee members.
One half does the other.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and just get started. So page 1, pipeline replacement. Caltrans 174, that is finished up. We have issued the notice of completion that was recorded in the early part of June, so this will be removed from further project status. This project is complete, went well. C&D did a great job, got their work done and got out of there with minimal hassle in terms of traffic control and some of those items. So that one's done. Same with Long Ravine. That was all performed in-house designed by Adrian and then in-house by our construction crews. We put quite a bit of pipe out there. As you can see, almost 7,500 feet of pipe, a couple of new poly tanks, and that project is now complete as well, so that will also be removed. So that one again went well. Our maintenance crews did a fabulous job putting that together. So very happy with that. Lidster Avenue and Country Club Terrace, that was designed in-house by us. Maintenance crews are currently working on it. Yes, sir.
I'm not sure where that is. Can you tell me where that is?
So Lidster and, I'm trying to think of that.
Hughes Road.
Is it Hughes that it is next to or runs into? It's over in, I'm pointing. Everybody can see that I'm pointing to nowhere.
You're pointing from that way.
Yeah, it's in the Grass Valley. East Main, Hughes Road.
Okay.
Is that starting to?
On the country club.
Country Club.
Yeah, correct. So it's over in that general area.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know the specific crossroad that still runs into, but yeah. So
it shows as Division 5, which it may be, but it's real close.
it's real close, right?
Right on the border in there.
Yeah, some of those
Right on the border,
Yeah.
it seems like.
Order of 3 and 5 or
1 and 5.
1.
1 and 5?
Yeah, it gets kind of tough to some of these
Down towards Auburn.
based on the maps. Yeah, yeah. When you look at the maps, it gets tricky.
It's up, East Main. It's
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of hard to tell based on the maps from GIS layer if you just look at them.
probably driven by
quickly.
1,000 miles
Yeah.
or more.
So that's under construction. They expect that to be done probably by mid-September.
Cool.
So they're moving forward with that. Christian Life Way at Highway 49. That's in design. Survey's complete. So we're working internally. That's an in-house design that Tanya's working on. The next one's Rough and Ready Roundabout. So this has to do with the roundabout that they're proposing to build over here on Ridge Road. Was that Ridge Road and I guess that's Highway, the old Rough and Ready Highway. So they're going to be putting a roundabout in that location. We've got an existing water line right there at that location, so we're needing to have to work with the county to relocate, to move that.
Facility there too, isn't there? Is it a PRD or?
So there's the
Tanya, why don't you
Join us.
join us up front?
there there is a PRD over near Adams Avenue, but that's gonna be outside of the area that's impacted. So it is the treated water line that runs along Rough and Ready Highway. And then we also have, the raw water facility that crosses Rough and Ready Highway, that we'll have to, either replace a culvert or potentially do some relocation. That part we're still working
The
on.
facility I'm talking about, though, is on 1 It's on the northwest corner of that T intersection. Is that gonna?
So that's, I think that is the Adams Ave, PRV that you're referring to.
Even though it's close to
It
the
has-
edge.
Correct, it has bollards around it.
Yes.
Yes, that's Adams Avenue. That one,
Up on-
even though it's off a ridge, it's
Even
still called the
though
Adams
it's not
Avenue.
as that close to Adams Avenue.
Right, yeah. That one, we don't anticipate to be affected by the roundabout.
Okay.
So I think one of the things we're looking at is whether we want to do some encasement and relocation of a small section of the ditch where it crosses under the road now, because we have trouble with that, I think, in terms of, the canal being small as well as, stuff with debris and other things
Yeah, it's an attractant for
for folks.
for folks, yeah.
And so this is a project that's been pushed forward because of the county's work that they're gonna be doing the roundabout, right? So they're now working with us. Our existing pipeline is gonna be right smack in the middle of the roundabout, so we wanna move that out of there, because if we have to go and work on it, last thing we wanna do is have to dig up right through the middle of the roundabout to do that. So this is one of those coordinations with the county.
Okay, thanks.
And so construction will be in the next year.
So the county's proposing to do their construction in the summer. We would want to relocate our treated water facilities ahead of them.
The summer, a year from now.
Correct.
Yeah, 21.
Yes, 2021. So yeah, we would want to do our relocation of our treated water facilities ahead of that. The raw water facility still kind of, we're working those details out, so I'm not quite sure if that would be ahead or in line with our construction.
Well, the raw water, the canal goes under the road quite a bit.
Yes,
That's really kind of a separate thing.
little bit, but, so their approach, their approach to the roundabout, at minimum, we would need to upgrade that crossing, and by we, I say in conjunction with the county, so a box culvert would go there. But in discussions with the county, it is possible if we do a kind of a realignment, that it would benefit their roundabout and the approach to their roundabout. So, and then it would also be beneficial to us because that particular canal does attract a lot of folks, and we do have debris that goes in the canal. There's been situations where there's been dumping in the canal. So it is a health and safety issue, and looking at and doing some realignment and encasement in that area.
The canal runs right along the road.
Yeah, it's easy access.
So
Correct.
it's an easy, quick dump.
Yes.
On some of these, would it be helpful sometimes, I'm thinking if we put up Google Maps or Google and just looked at the
So I show 'em?
intersections so we can see what we're talking about?
Sure. Yeah, we could
To
do
me,
that.
that would be really helpful, because
Okay.
I think it brings it into context, so we know where we're at.
Yeah, we can do that. We can have it where we can scroll through our GIS layer or whatever and look at spots, sure.
I think that, to me, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
Now I want to go out there and look at it, and when I look at it, that's the fact I'm going, you know.
Is this where we were? Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. The next one is Apple Avenue and Annex Avenue. This is another one that, got pushed forward. It's an area that's, in need of replacement. We've had some leaks, et cetera, there in the past, but it was lower on our list. However, city or county, I can't remember now, this is real close to the borderline. Yeah, I think it's within the city. They're doing a bunch of repaving work out there. And so, a way for us to save costs and time and effort is to go out there and replace that line before they go out and do their repaving. So, we put a rush on that to get the design done, handed that off to maintenance, and now maintenance is building that, so we can get that completed. So then when the city comes in and repaves, will already be done. We won't have to worry about tearing up existing or new pavement. So it's just one of those things that, you know, we have coordination with the cities and the counties, so when something comes up like that, then we try to see if we can do that. So they're in construction of that as well right now. Cedar Ridge PRV, the design's at 90%. Looks like we need some adjustments on the easement, so we'll be working with the property owner to get that finalized. I don't know if it's new additional easement or if it's just adjusting or moving the easement around.
A little of it is some additional, but we are within our existing easement, but because we've moved to above-ground structures, we need to obtain more rights from the property owner.
Gotcha.
Where exactly is that here?
So, in the Cedar Ridge area, there's two streets, Brunswick and Cedar Avenue. It's at the end of Cedar Avenue, and it goes, it's from the pipeline that comes through the old mill and mine site there.
Okay.
And so, right there at the top, we have a PRV to serve Cedar Avenue, Brunswick.
Okay.
Next one's East Ridge PRV. This is pretty early in the design. We've got survey done. Existing easement. What we're finding on a lot of these is, you know, the district has switched to moving all our PRV stations to above ground. That means some of the existing easements that's there for the underground vault that was there previously are not adequate. So we're having to go in there and address that and potentially make changes or get additional easements. So that slows the process a little bit, just in general. And then Bergeron Lane, we're actually going to remove the PRV station altogether and extend a new pipeline up and put individual services, the high-pressure services on them, and remove the station altogether.
So that each service is like its own PRV?
Correct, because this is a small line that goes up and it serves, I think it's like 6 to 8 customers, something like that, maybe 10 at the most. It's a dead-end line. That PRV only serves that line. So it makes sense to just replace the line and put in individual PRVs and not have us maintain a PRV station and replace that.
PRVs become the responsibility of the customers.
We purchase them and install them and then install them on their side of the meter and they maintain it? Is that what you're saying?
Yes? No?
I believe for the high pressure service lines, we've recently changed to putting them before the meter, so then they're actually our responsibility.
Okay,
I believe that's the case.
okay.
We would maintain them.
Well, I may stand corrected then.
Do we have many of those?
We do. So, Table Meadow is all high-pressure services down in the Table Meadow Phase 1, as well as the Phase 2 that they're constructing now. Those are high-pressure services.
So it becomes just an economic analysis, whether one bigger PRV is cheaper than 6 little ones.
Mm-hmm. And when the line needed to be replaced anyway, the main line that was running up the road, that was also part of the decision with regards to that, right? So by allowing us to do that, it doesn't require us
I assume that
to build a big above
you do the
ground vault.
economic analysis flawlessly.
Yeah. Okay, next one, for raw water systems. So Doty North, meeting with the property owner later this week to confirm some adjustments to the easements and the temporary access easement, so we can get that moving. One thing that we're checking into now is with regards to the steel pipe. Due to COVID, et cetera, we've heard that the time for ordering and receiving the steel pipe can be upwards of 14 to 16 weeks, which complicates our construction to bid it out and have it constructed this fall. So we need to confirm that, and what we might be doing, although it's not the most ideal situation, is to purchase the pipe ahead of time. Have the district purchase the pipe so we can get that on order, so that by October/November, the pipe would be available for delivery, so that the contractor can do it. Yeah, right.
Sure we do.
There's always a risk with doing that, in that if there's any errors or issues with regards to the pipe, then it's a district problem, whereas typically you let the contractor order that material, so if there's an error or an issue with it, it's a them problem, not an us problem. But if we don't do that, then that could potentially push the pipe not being available if we bid it out in September to not be available until January or February potentially, so.
And then the contractor just reimburses us the cost of the pipe.
So we would just pay for the pipe, and then their contract,
We pay for it anyway.
correct, it just wouldn't be in their contract, it wouldn't be paying for the materials.
I would figure, pre-ordering the pipe and getting it all done. Project is a good project, it's gonna go anyway.
Correct, right.
Is this the siphon project where that property
Yeah.
that we met in?
Mhm.
So this is on his property?
Correct. Yeah, this is the same one, the Doty North siphon number 1, correct. So it's welded steel pipe that's gonna be installed, and there's just potentially a big delay, so we gotta call out to JIFCO and a couple others just to see, Northwest, to see what kind of time frame they currently have. Because some of the contractors that we've talked to on other projects have stated that welded steel is becoming a problem in terms of just being able to get it, so.
And what CDF application is it, what is this application to CDF?
So we are waiting to hear from them. If they do not, they have 60 days to respond. If they don't respond, then the application is approved with,
Incidental take or which?
just to be able to, with our mitigation measures and our submittal for the application, right, the standard BMPs and then what we have in our mitigation document.
So there's an application for 1601?
Yes, because we're not in the water course, but within the riparian area, which requires us to get that. That's why we need to get the LSA correct. So they have a certain amount of time. If they don't respond, then it's automatic approval. If they do respond, then we'll deal with their questions or comments accordingly. We have not yet heard anything. We've submitted that, so we're just on wait. But time frame wise, we've got plenty of time to be able to get that document done and still be able to construct in November. Santini 1, we had a meeting out there with the property owners last week, a week and a half ago. Went really well. So we think we've got the new alignment and some minor easements that are needed to be done. Everybody seems to be on board with that. So we're moving forward. We are hoping to be able to bid this out this fall and have it constructed this fall/winter. A little ahead of what we originally had thought. So if that's the case, we can get that Santini siphon, and that's down in, yeah.
On these two siphons, and there was two more, that, well, there's the hay.
Yep.
And then there was another one. But do we know how many more customers we'll be able to pick up in my division to serve raw water to with these improvements?
So I don't. I know the Santini does, and both the Santini and the Santini, the Doty, and the Haight all have moratoriums on them.
Yeah.
I don't know the specific number. I think there's quite a bit on Santini, if not the number, just in the amount of water. I think there's some larger parcels out there, and so some folks interested in considerable amounts of water.
And what, where is it off Gold Hill or?
That's off Crater Hill and Chili Hill, right? So
Right.
comes down off of there. That's the Dudley that feeds that. That's part of the Dudley Canal.
All three of them?
No, just the Santini. So Doty North is Doty North. That's the canal. And then the Haight Canal is the Haight. That's the name of the canal.
Beer Street from.
Well, they all come through that system, right? The Doty North comes off of the AR1 right there.
Doty North is AR1.
Comes right off of the AR1 where it splits into the Doty North, the AR2, and the Chevalier Pipe there at our the Gold Hill Maintenance Yard. So that's where those splits off. So that's the head of the Doty North. I don't know what the Haight comes off of. It doesn't come. It's a lateral of all those, yeah.
Okay.
Right. That's where the map could help, so you can take a look at that.
I will.
In the future.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So next year we potentially could provide more water to customers.
Correct. Absolutely. Both the Doty North and the Santini ones.
Yeah.
So both of those
Great.
should be able to be opened up. South Yuba Canal. So we've given a bunch of information to GHD for their analysis, so they've started crunching through those pictures, etc. We're trying to set up a meeting with PG&E maintenance folks at the end of this month with GHD to have a discussion before they go out and do their field walks. They've postponed their field walks in part because of the COVID and the requirements of having more than one person in the vehicle, et cetera. So, the end of this month, we should have folks on the ground actually walking the facility now. The tunnel inspections will occur this fall during the outage. We missed the window for the spring one, again, mostly due to COVID, so. But we are moving forward with that document. And then Haight Canal is the next one. We've got final drawings in for review internally for the Haight one. Maintenance plans on building that this fall as well. That's in their schedule, so we're hoping to give them the drawings by the end of the week so they can start to do their takeoffs and ordering materials so that come October they can also do this facility at the same time. So again, this one should get done for sure this fall. And this was a maintenance project from the beginning. So maintenance was working with Janelle Nolan to confirm whether there was any environmental issues, et cetera. Then it got jumped over to us to size the pipeline accordingly and to put the drawings together. So this was one that originated in maintenance and then I think came this direction. So. Next one is the backbone extension. First one is the description needed to be replaced, and we will make sure we take care of that. This description that's shown here of the 8,653 feet of pipe, that was all back from the original thought of the project that Gary was moving forward with. And if you look back, you can see that this hasn't been changed since December. October was actually, I think, changed in October or September, but we didn't have a project status for a couple of those engineering committees. So the first one that shows up on is December. But this is the reason why we came in January to talk to the board about the overall project and not this component of it. So we just need to correct that.
It was like that in June as well.
Yeah.
It was like that in June as well, same description.
Yeah, we just missed it. We just didn't catch it, that we need to update it.
More about that.
Yeah, we can do that right now. So as we're moving forward with the phase one of the things required some additional right-of-way at the church locations for the PRV. While they are not opposed to the easement, we are in delay to obtain that easement. Part of it is because, well, it's a process, right, with the church, and they have their board, and they have a process they have to go through. Part of it was sticker shock. I think their expectation of what it was worth was not the same as what the offer that was, the appraisal that was sent out. Part of the problem we're having is the amount that the property is appraised at, for them to go through their process and have our attorneys review documents, et cetera, cost them potentially as much or more than the easement that we're willing to pay them. So we're kind of struggling with that a little bit, trying to figure out a way to make all that work. So since I am not willing to bid that section out until I have my right-of-way taken care of, I've asked Tanya to look at moving forward with bidding out a new first phase, which is actually part of, I don't remember the different phase, but it's later on. It's part of the existing system improvements that needs to be upgraded. And part of those system improvements are identified to be upgraded regardless of whether this project happened or not. But they have to be improved in order to make this project move forward and be able to work hydraulically, et cetera. So now we're having Tanya look at putting together that and sending out work related to work within our system first and to focus on that while we continue to deal with the right-of-way with regards to the church and focus on first doing the improvements within our existing system before we start to run the pipeline down the hill. I think in the short term, overall the project costs what it costs, right? We're not reducing the cost of the project, but what we're doing by doing these phases first is we're reducing the amount of capital needed in these first couple of years. By replacing the existing infrastructure improvements and upgrades over the first 3 years, the difference is roughly a little over $2 million, $2.2 million less that we would have to spend to do this portion of the project versus the first 3 phases of the new pipeline going down the hill. if that makes sense.
Does that mean then we're gonna come back to the board with it?
Yes, so the idea here is just to discuss that because of the right-of-way concerns, et cetera, we think it's prudent to just work on the existing infrastructure first. It's also, money is an issue, right? We're having discussions and concerns about monies in general. By building these phases first, it softens the impact to the capital budget in these first couple of years. Like I said, ultimately, the project is what it is. It would cost roughly the $20 million that we talked about. But it's less money in these first couple of years if we focus on this component first, which also benefits our existing system and the improvements within our existing system. So it seems to make sense to me to move forward with that component first, because they all still need to be done as part of that project.
And because it does benefit.
And it benefits the
What
existing.
type of existing improvements are we?
She'd probably be better to,
Yeah, we're talking about, doing some parallel lines for just, overall demand for the area based on that pipeline flow. We can either do a replacement or build a parallel line, in another situation, but for some of these more congested areas, we're most likely gonna be building parallel lines so that we can give operational flexibility to our staff. We're gonna do some additional installations of valves for that reason too. I don't plan on those two phases involving any infrastructure such as PRVs, so it's strictly pipeline.
And so do you know what phases they were in the original project?
I thought I brought that up here with me. I think it's like,
9, I think is
6
one of them.
and 9, I can confirm that. I had the sheet with me, I don't know what happened to it.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Hughes Road area, Slate Creek area, and then also Ridge Road area.
It was towards the tail end, and that was, the original thought was more of the new line as it's going down the hill can meet certain demands, but ultimately these improvements will need to be done to be able to meet its max demand and design capacities. So they were originally slated towards the end of the project. I'm suggesting we just push that to the front of the project,
Yeah, I guess
because they need to be done anyway.
my feeling is that, if the project is a whole, all the parts ultimately need to be done.
Correct.
And whether you start at point A or point C or point D is somewhat immaterial, as long as they all eventually get done. And of course, starting at point C means that, doesn't mean you're not gonna do, A and B. And A and B can't really work properly until you do D. So, I don't think it really matters where you start. I think the important thing is to get started.
And I think, I would agree with that, and I think some of the pieces behind this thought process with Doug and his team is, as we're looking at, from the last conversation of the board, we're looking at rates, we're looking at all our other things financial to the district, and how can we best amend, adjust, and process differently and have different thought process on it. And so, with this right-of-way consideration that we're running into up the way, it was a great opportunity to refocus and say, hey, we can take care of this existing infrastructure right now. We can save ourselves a couple $1 million over the short term, 2 or 3 years, instead of having to utilize our capital budget for this at the moment. We can perhaps utilize it in some other opportunities. And so the project is still part of this work is still part of the project, but in the general financial overall view and cash outflow of the district, this is a prudent process.
It's a way to get started, and we may choose to bond the whole project anyway, and step it up. This allows us to get started, allows us also to go to some of the stakeholders and say, we have started this project.
Yeah,
We're not gonna get to you for a few years, but know that we are starting to put infrastructure in the ground.
It still would take a few years to get that in there, right?
Even if you build the current phase now, it's gonna take quite a few years before that becomes operational and provides the benefits to Lake Wildwood that they're looking for.
Right, and we're following what the board's direction is at this point, right, which is to put this through our capital program and to build this out over a 8 to 10 year process.
And meanwhile, we have invested in, sort of the short-term fixes that were recommended in the HDR report, at the wildlife treatment plant. There's certain valving and other things that they recommended.
So yeah, as we discussed when we talked about the 5-year CIP, right, in next year's budget, I have those 3 items that were identified in next year's budget, which was the drying beds, the screen intake at the new town, and then I think it was the high lift pumps.
So we're continuing to apply the necessary Band-Aids to keep the facility up and running.
Well, I don't know, I call it Band-Aid, but yeah.
But you know.
But yes, we're continuing to maintain the facility that we're gonna use in operation, and then, yes, also doing the work that we need to make that interconnection for the future goals.
And we have to keep looking down the road. So the immediate items have been attended to or will be attended to.
Correct.
And so it's not as if the plant is in imminent failure mode.
No.
And that's been portrayed that way, but that's not the case.
It's not the case.
Not the plant.
Or imminent capacity mode.
It's at a point where it triggers the planning process to expand the capacity.
Or to at least consider it, yes.
And it has on occasion reached maximum,
2006.
which it has.
So, I have a question. Are you done? Okay. Thank you. If we have sites, and I'm not opposed to this, don't get me wrong, I'm not opposed to fixing these existing things. But we're upsizing it to be able to push another 2 million gallons more through that existing system. Is that what we're doing?
So you mean the upgrades that we do to our existing facility? So yes, the upgrades are sized appropriately to be able to take on that 2 million gallons, to Lake Wildwood, as well as the soft serve area. But then there's also the benefit for the max state demand in the planning for that area, excuse me.
Okay.
As well as the fire flow benefits
Yes. Correct.
within the existing system.
Within the existing system.
So my feeling is that we need to get started, and where we put the first shovel in the ground is somewhat immaterial, because ultimately the shovel has to go in the ground everywhere.
Correct. But the shovel, moving the shovel at the moment helps with the short-term financial consideration of the district.
In the short term.
Yeah.
In the long term, and we're asked to think in the long term.
That's
in the
right.
long term, it all comes up.
Yes, it doesn't reduce the cost of the project, correct.
Builds in the regionalization of our water systems.
And we will come back to the board. Obviously, we'll move forward with putting the plans and specs and moving forward with building this first phase. We would bid it out, and then it would come to the board, because it's going to be a number that would require board approval anyway.
Oh, so because we're changing the scope, we don't need to bring it to the board
We're downside.
to change the scope?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, if that's something that the committee suggests we do, but yeah, it's actually less
I
than.
don't want to relitigate the whole process. I mean, the board has already given you authority to move forward with this project.
Yeah, we're not going to be spending more in this first phase than what the board had observed in that detail breakdown of the different phases and the costs associated with them. This first phase that we'll be doing now would not be any more, it'll be less than
So
what.
I would want to leave it up to engineering's discretion as to where to start.
And then we can just have that presentation when we bring that contract of award to the
Why
board of why we
this
decided to
rather
do
than
this
that.
and that, correct?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, we're on to page 2, sorry. Combi Phase 1. So the contractor is currently pulled off-site. They'll be back in at the end of August or September to start connecting the bypass.
Is the bypass all in place?
It is not. It's not. But they did do the drilling for the anchors, so they went in and had all the anchors drilled. So those holes are there with the cables. So they'll come back and start work on that again in September, so that we're ready to go come October 15th to put in that second phase. It's actually a little bit less pipe in the second phase, so knock on wood, everything goes as well as the first phase. And
So will they
we're in
be
and out of there.
accessing the project through the same point?
So,
Now they have to drag
no.
the pipe, all the way past the new pipe?
No, so they'll be mostly coming through Puma Trail, which is the one that we use to build the siphon, the Bear River siphon. So they'll come from the bottom end and go from the middle and work their way back down to themselves, correct?
Okay.
Yeah, so they'll work from up. They'll still use that staging area up top a little bit, but most of the work will be funneling through Puma Trail, coming down to the bottom end.
So it's backfilling over that box?
So they've done some, they haven't finished it. They haven't finished up and pulled their final grades and slopes, et cetera, but they've built the material up. So,
It's good to let it have the time to settle.
yeah.
Get used to being in this new home.
Well, we got some rails and some different things to talk about how we want to do that to make sure we don't drive off the edge of it, because it's a pretty steep slope coming down those ramps. So, there's the contract shows a guardrail. It's pretty industrious looking.
Industrial.
But we have quite a bit of rocks from the project, so we may look at doing something like that where we use rock to define the edge of the driveway. So.
What area is this again on the pipeline? Is it
So-
where we were at?
Yeah, so it's when you
saw it.
Yes, by the.
where all the material was.
You saw them building the box over the pipe.
Yeah.
And that's all backfilled, and those are ramps to allow the vehicle.
Us to be able to access across. So we have one up at the head, right there by the pump station, and then we have one right there at that area where all the material was stored and being processed. And that goes both directions, and then we'll have one at the far end, so that we'll be able to drive the whole line without having to try to turn around and go backwards. Yeah. So now that we've got a road, now it's wide enough with the pipe that we can drive a vehicle, et cetera, down there. It makes it a lot
It's not
simpler.
wide enough to turn around a semi-trailer.
No, or even the pickup. But one of the things we talked about with the CIP last is I had some money sitting in there for this project for next year, and that was the concern about the road. Now that we're constructing Cable Meadows Phase 2, there's a section of road we were concerned about that is doing exactly what we were concerned it would do. It's failing, even though it's dry, and the work's going on. The trucks used for just installation of the 8-inch pipeline along Table Meadows is causing that section to fail. So it is something we're going to have to deal with all winter, just to make sure it's passable for the neighbors, and then ultimately have to come back in there and do some work to replace that road, because as with most private roads, they're typically done on the cheap. Not much base, if any. A lot of it's just chip seal or a couple layers thereof. And it's struggling. There's a section that's struggling. We're going to be driving through that section with the pipeline come this winter, where it's going to be even worse with it being wet in terms of pumping, et cetera. So that's why that money was in there. We know we're going to have to do some improvements once we get done with the overall project. Right now, what we'll do is try to figure out how we can just get through the winter. Yeah, we may have to do some coal patching or maybe do a thin lift or a couple lifts and then just maintain it. And we just need to make sure it remains passable for the property owners. And then we can come back when we're all done next year and go in there and peel that out and put some base down and do a little, give it a little more strength through that section. So I just wanted to let you guys know that it is failing and we will have to deal with it. So next year we will be working on some road stuff out there.
So before the fall, this,
It would be, so we'll do some temporary work this year, just so it's passable. But the thought process is we'll just do the minimum we need to be able to continue to work through the winter. And then next year, when we're all done with everything, we'll come back and in the spring or summer, we'll come back and do the real work. So anyway, just more of a heads up that what we thought was happening is happening. So here we go. Centennial, since the last quarterly update, which we had last one, we haven't spent anything. There's been nothing that's happened, since the last quarterly update. There's nothing going on.
Do you anticipate the AB 32 process?
52, no. No. We have not had any comments or thoughts from the tribes at this point. I think COVID has put a damper on all of that.
Okay.
For sure. I don't anticipate anything happening through the end of the year for that project. Alta Sierra Tank. So that's another big project that we got going. We should have some preliminary drawings to review internally in the next couple weeks. Construction still anticipated to start in October. We've had the discussion that we've downsized the tank from the $5 million original down to the $3 million. So we are moving forward with that. We should see a savings, construction-wise, of around $1 million. We're trying to finalize the elevation pad and how much material we have to bring in, and if we can use it all from on-site material versus having to bring some material and some base rock.
And there are no issues with pushing that reservoir out of service temporarily?
Well, there's always issues in terms of not having that additional storage sitting there, which is why we won't allow it to start until October to get us through. The demand is lower, and while we're still in theory in fire season in October, we've at least gone past the July, August, September timeframe, so we can operate the system without the reservoir needing to be in service.
And this is a design build?
Correct.
Using the same contractor we use on
For Banner Taylor, correct.
And they're very, very good.
Yes, we had very good luck with them on the Banner Taylor project. So,
How long ago was that treatment plant decommissioned?
treatment plant,
The one at Alta Sierra, wasn't there a treatment plant there at Alta Sierra?
well, I'm not aware of one. There was, it used to be a open pit reservoir, raw water reservoir.
Yeah.
That's always been served out of one.
Yeah, I don't think there was ever a treatment plant there.
Because it was used to...
It was an open reservoir.
Reservoir for storage, for raw water, right?
And then we converted it to a treated water system.
There was a treatment plant in Sherwood Forest.
Oh, so this is what, it was an open reservoir, it's like a sailing basin for the Loma Ridge treatment plant?
No.
What was doing, why did we originally build that in ground?
Because it was originally just a raw water facility that had storage there. Well, as Alta Sierra, et cetera, developed and became a treated water system, that got converted to a treated water storage tank. And just like we did with Banner Taylor, it was cheaper to just line and cover them with Hypalon than to tear it out and construct a tank. So we went in there and made this reservoir into a...
Treated water reservoir.
Correct. Correct, and you just put it with the Hypalon line and covered. It became a treated water storage facility. Not that I'm aware of.
I just didn't understand why we had a raw water reservoir.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that.
It's just a convenience to be able to... Yeah, the original raw water.
Canal, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know the details of why that thing was built.
We can look.
We can figure that out, yeah.
There was past systems that might have taken, there were past systems that we did take over that had little, I don't know that I necessarily call them treatment plants, but had some sort of treatment. I can't remember Alta Sierra being one of them.
It's not ringing a bell, but...
Yeah.
I just was curious why we had Hypalon in line. I just thought.
Yeah, it was I know it was a conversion to treated water before we, yeah.
The nearest standalone treatment plant to there was actually Sherwood Forest, on Alden Road. And that was taken into service years ago.
So
That was in conjunction with this is maybe for that or
I
something?
think this is probably served out of Loma Ridge and Sherwood Forest. And back in the olden days, there were tons of little standalone treatment plants that were basically just dump chlorine and dewater, serve it up.
Right.
Plants. Penn Valley was that way, and there were a bunch of them. How I know that because I did water analysis for all of them. When Wagner brought his samples in, there was a dozen of these little treatment plants that aren't in existence anymore.
It's just, it was a cheap and easy conversion to a treated water system to use the Hypalon.
Okay, I was just curious.
So anyway, so we're still on track to start in October, and that should be done by, I think, June of next year. We'll have that tank in service, so things are moving along. North Auburn Treatment Plant, this is upgrading the high lift pumps, putting VFDs in, as well as the PSPS generator, which really pushed this project forward. And so we've got under contract with A-Team, which is funny. The A-Team.
The 18, they're out of Sacramento.
Yeah, so the joke was, right, when our age, there was the A-Team was the TV show.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
right.
That's why we giggled there. So yeah, so they're underway. One of the biggest things we're looking at is, we prefer this to be a natural gas generator. It's a large natural gas generator that we need to be able to run the treatment plant. So it's gonna need a 6-inch feed line, and we're not sure if PG&E can meet the demand without having to make a bunch of improvements. So right now, we're looking at that. So, because we want to keep it as a gas generator. If not, we'd have to consider diesel. There's a lot of permitting and other concerns with it, although there was some talk with the PSPS about easing or not requiring the permit conditions for truly backup generators for PSPS then. I don't know if that ever was finalized or not, so we would prefer not to do that because they're just a lot more of a hassle.
On-site fuel storage.
Correct, yeah. No, that's definitely the better way to go, but if we have to make a ton of improvements to PG&E system, be able to get that flow, then it probably doesn't pencil out. So that's what we're looking at now. So we would expect that stuff to not make it through this PSPS event, but we'll get it done hopefully by the end of this year, the beginning of next year, which is important. North Auburn needs to be able to operate during a PS event. Pine Woods Pump Station, again, we're looking at it, same type of thing. This is just a generator install, it's nothing extra. But what we're looking at is whether we can do that. There's no natural gas, so it's a propane generator. Whether we can size it accordingly. I don't think we can get one big enough to run all the pumps, but maybe we don't need all the pumps to run. So we're taking a look at that to see if we can, what we can do or if we have to do with these. Again, Pine Woods is the DS Canal. Let's see, what's the, I can't think of the road that, is that?
First Line Road.
Yeah, right there. So, this was another PSPS event, one that we're moving forward with. So anyway, we're under study as to whether...
Pine Woods pumps raw water out of the DS into...
this is a feed for...
Pine Woods pumps raw water out of the DS into...
This is a feed for the E-George system.
Oh,
Right, this is a secondary location.
To get water to E-George.
Correct.
Normally, E-George would drop it out of the Cascade now. And it provides redundancy to get a backup supply to E-George. Got it. Okay.
And to feed the raw water system as well, right, up above, yeah. Okay, iron ores, that one's all finished up. We finished paving, et cetera, notice of completion's done, so we'll close that out. That was the DFWLE, that was over there in Division 3. Table Meadows Phase 2, I was talking about. They're moving along quite well in terms of the installation of the pipe. They haven't hit anything of real, obviously they haven't hit a lot of rock because we're having trouble with the road for other reasons. But they should probably have the main line installed by the end of next week. And then they'll have to go back and do the process for the services and do some of those, set the hydrants and all that. But they're moving along well at a nice pace. They should be in and out of there before Rado starts ramping up for Phase 1 this fall. So that was the concern that we had, to make sure we get this done, and we're going to be able to meet that deadline. So Tiger's doing that one, correct.
Sign of desperation.
Rados was second on that one. And then, Loma Rica Drive, DFWLE, that's kind of the next one, on the list. I don't see there's anything here, so, I've seen the cost estimate for it, but, we're not necessarily moving forward with it at this point. Partly because there's not enough money in the budget for this year to be able to construct this. This is another one that's probably about 13 to 14, or 1.3 to 1.4 million to get this project completed. And we'll talk a little bit later about projects in general, in terms of the discussion the board had about using some of the capital to be able to pay for the debt service and some of the programs that may need to be considered, or projects that may need to be postponed or moved out a little bit to be able to meet that. DFWLE may be one program to talk about with regards to doing that. And then Maranatha's, same thing, they're on the waiting list for funding, but they're after the Loma Rica one, so there's not much happening there. Hydro, I don't think there's been a whole lot up to date. I have not been aware that the maintenance facility plan has been completed yet. I haven't seen that. I haven't heard from Kean that that's the case, so I'm assuming they're still working on that, as well as the radio tower.
The radio tower can proceed on its own page.
Correct. Yeah, it's not a requirement of the building.
They could construct a radio tower and hook it into the secret town office.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be, it's not required to have the new hydro facility involved in order to make this one work. Correct. It's just going to be in the same potential location.
And there's enormous advantages in having that radio tower there in terms of line of sight communication of all our facilities.
Right. Right.
So,
yeah,
that actually, that seems like higher priority than the new office.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a lot easier than the new office space. But yeah, I think it really connects with those upper division radio frequency transmissions that we can have better opportunity to communicate in the upper country that we don't currently have now. So it's a safety consideration. I think there's locations where we can repeat that are easier than others. So we try to, I think I don't know everything about it, but I'd say it's an upgrade to the general communications for the upper division system.
I think the Caleb tower and some of those other things. Yeah.
It seems like there's so many of these hydro projects that
So-
engineering's not involved in. Perhaps it might be helpful for Kean to come to this meeting.
So that's a good comment. I was thinking about that this morning, actually, that it may be a benefit to have Kean or maybe Nathan, somebody with a little more information on it, to be able to come in here and speak a little more about what's going on, right? Part of the plan currently is that Hydro develops the project to a certain point and then hands them off to engineering to get them finished up and constructed. There's some discussion about how the process should be working.
Yeah.
But we're kind of in a weird spot right now in terms of interim GM, interim engineering manager, et cetera. But so yes, I think there's some discussions that need to happen in terms of some of these things, and how the engineering and Hydro work together to get these projects completed. But without going into the details of the past, I think kind of what was agreed to, at least for now, is for them to get it to a point and then hand them to us for us to move forward with them. So.
So for now, it seems like it would be helpful.
I think so.
Or them would come and
I was starting to read through these, and that was my thought when I was reading these, that I can read these just like you can, so I'm not giving you a bunch of specific information, whereas maybe Nathan or somebody like that would be would be a better discussion. So I'll touch base with Kean about that for future ones.
Right.
That we do that.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
Especially in this interim period.
Yeah.
And so, okay, yeah, I think we can certainly look at that. There was problems, so Kean wasn't really at these meetings and
No, they haven't been.
not for a while.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, not for the recent.
No, and it hasn't been, right? And
Yeah.
there's been some work that had gone on with Rim and Keene and Gary, right, on how these projects and trying to get through some of these bugs. And so we need to continue to work on that. But I'll touch base with him. It may not be Keene, it may be somebody else that may be better, but we'll get somebody here that can maybe walk through those specific ones and be able to discuss it more.
It seems like this part of the report is expanding pretty significantly.
Yeah. Because
It's
it's,
not your fault, but, you know, just
Yeah.
because of the situation right now, it'd be helpful if someone could see what's going on.
absolutely.
Well, also considering as we look at, upcoming FERC, we're gonna see some more capital improvement processes. So Hydro's gonna wanna be involved in those discussions.
And that's why when the new GM and the new engineering, I think we're gonna look at this whole thing,
Sure.
so. Kind of get,
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Hydro's gonna be exploding.
So, a couple of things. One, on the page 3, the first one there, the Combi South upgrades. So the Hydro, has ordered the transformer that's coming this fall. They have asked engineering to design the pad for it. So we're currently doing that now. So that's, we'll get that squared away and then get that over to them. The Hydro crews will build the pad. It's pretty straightforward. It's nothing too elaborate, for the new transformer. So, Ted Blank, yeah, he works in Hydro. Yeah,
And engineering.
no. I don't know what his title is specifically. He is not an engineer. Yeah.
Been there very long?
Must have been there 2 years, couple years,
Maybe 3.
3 to 5. Something like that. So what I'd like to do is just skip down to the hydro, dam and water improvements. First thing I want to do is throw out, we have a meeting tomorrow to talk about Loma Rica Reservoir. Loma Rica Reservoir has got some seismic stability issues in its construction. I believe it's DSOD that's driven that. So we're going to have to make some improvements, some retrofits to Loma Rica Reservoir.
That means fortifying the dam.
Yeah, whether that means rebuilding it, whether that means using a slurry, right, like a soil slurry mix, like they do with the levees, to go in there and drive down, et cetera. That's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow, is regards to that. So it's currently not on the list, but it will be because it's something we have to address and move forward.
Hydro project?
It's in hydro because it is a dam safety item, because it is a jurisdictional dam, and that's why it's Dollar Chin that's involved with that one. So
What number is that?
it's not on this list. Yeah, I just wanted to add it that it's coming. This is the reservoir that sits at the Loma Rica treatment plant, which is the raw water storage for the Loma Rica treatment plant. We just got done cleaning some of that out. But the way it was constructed, it's got a liquefaction concern that we need to address, that DSOD wants us to address. So we're going to start that discussion tomorrow. But just wanted to give the committee a heads up. That's another project that will be coming up, that we'll have to be doing. That will be regulatory driven with regards to that work being done. So, add it to the list, things to do. Scott's Flat. So the stability analysis is being reviewed by DSOD right now. I haven't heard from DAR if he's received that yet. So they're still looking at it. They're also reviewing the hydraulic modeling that we're proposing and that plan. Once that gets approved, then we would come to the board with that item and the costs associated with what it would take to do that modeling. And we'll bring that before the board. So DSOD and FERC are reviewing that currently. I don't know what that specific time frame is, but DAR is working with them to get that approval process going. And then Combi Scour, the geologic mapping's done, and they're evaluating the groins for scour concerns and potential. Then from that, they will develop their alternatives on how we can address the scouring potential or concerns as we move forward with that process. And that's including stabilization as well as scouring protection, right? So it's a combination of things, plus the look at the potential to increase the size of the penetration of the dam, be able to feed the Phase 1 system. That was all part of that consultant contract.
And the amount of water from the town of Foster?
Correct. Yep. So the other ones are kind of just like you read, I guess. To improve the spillway training walls, those are being done. That was done in-house, design by DAR. That's being finalized to DSOD and FERC. And then the gauging station at French Dam, the concrete lining upstream. That's,
I have a question about that penetration.
Yeah.
Bringing more water to Foster.
Yeah.
Was there a study or an assessment done on growth of potential increase in supply that we're going to need down there? Do we know?
So part of the reason we're looking at that is the potential to take water from the Bear River Canal and run it all through our system and get out of the Bear River Canal. So we send, 80, 100-ish CFS through the Bear River Canal, which takes off just below Rollins.
And that helps maintain water that we ship to Placer County, water agencies.
PCWA has water in that system as well. They also have water running through. That's a PG&E owned system that has also PCWA and NID water in it. So one of
Water
the
that goes to feed Auburn Ravine?
yes, because it comes in through the Rock Creek, et cetera, right?
Okay.
Yep.
So kind of funnels down into Rock Creek, and then we distribute mostly out of that zone.
Yeah. So that was part of it, right? To be able to increase the capacity, to be able to deliver more water through our Phase 1 system. Now that we've improved that, we still have other improvements that have to be made within the Combi-Ophir system. There's a siphon, I think at least one siphon, that would be a restriction. But that's part of the reason for it. Part of it too was, I guess it's less on the table at the moment, which was the regional water supply plant, treatment plant. That was also part of it, because that was increasing flows above the raw water master plant. And then, because even the Bear River siphon was sized with the intent of being able to feed that regional plant. And then also, it is a very tight restriction in terms of limiting our availability with hydro, et cetera. So having a bigger penetration reduces the head losses through there at those higher flows.
How does
helps
it
out.
impact the generation of power there?
So we burn, so that plant is a little over 525, 535 kW rated plant. That's actually currently only rated to 3-something because we can't, it can handle up to 200 CFS through that plant. That was designed to do that. We can't run it more than, I think, about 160. And then we start to decrease our power generation because we're burning up too much head to get it that much water through the penetration to get there. Because it's a 34-inch that goes through the dam. It was a 36 originally. Yes, correct, by reducing the head losses through there, correct. And so really what this study is because they were going through and doing so much work on Combi Dam, it made sense to have them take a look at what would it take, can we enlarge the penetration, and what would it take to do that? It was money well spent at this point, not that we would immediately want to do that work, but I think part of what we need to do is it feasible to use the existing facility like that? Otherwise, the options are to start to look at an inlet tower or something to that effect and trying to go around the abutments, tunnel through, et cetera, if we need to get more water down the system. So, and if it works, to consider how they develop their stability and scouring protection and still be able to allow that in the future if we decide to do that. Because if you don't think about that while you're going through there, you may be putting additional rods, et cetera, anchors in, and then it limits our ability to be able to make that penetration larger in the future.
Seems like the whole pipeline, if it was for that regionalization project, it was kind of premature before the regional project, was even a regional project.
No, so the facility is designed to meet current master plan flows, which is 200, which is not part of the regional plan. The facility had failed several times, was continuing to leak, subject to trees, rocks, et cetera, right? It was a high hazard. So roughly almost 60% of our water deliveries go through that system. It needed to be upgraded, it needed to be replaced. So we needed to do that. So the system and the pipe and everything is designed for open channel flow to meet that 200 CFS. Ultimately, being that it's pressurized pipe, we could put that conduit under pressure if we had a larger penetration or even just go into the dam, which would allow more water to flow through that pipe at that point. But if we never do it, that pipe was sized to be able to meet the open channel flow requirements.
For existing and
For existing,
build out.
for the build out of the current raw water master plan, right, which did not include the regional plan.
Okay, good.
Yeah. For example, the Bear River siphon. We upsized it to conserve head in the siphon with the intent of that pipeline going down to serve the regional plant. It would allow us to go over a high spot at a higher elevation than to try to drive right through it, tunnel through it. And it was relatively cheap. The difference between a 48 and a 54-inch steel pipe is pennies on the dollar, right, to the overall project. But we conserve a bunch of head to make it cheaper to build something down the road. So with some of those types of thoughts that were involved with it.
I remember that discussion when that siphon was completed and we put it in service. The levels in the upstream canal dropped 12 inches right off the bat, and then the system became much less stressed.
Yeah. So, got left here. Chicago Park, let's see, the lower one, the canal replacement, there's some sections where it's needs to be replaced, where it's peeled and spalled, et cetera. So they're putting something together, a definition, a memo of what needs to be done, and that'll get transferred to engineering for us to put a design on it and get that project built. Yeah.
Are we going to be doing another section of the Spalding Canal this year?
No.
So if we've been doing that at
Correct.
400 feet at a time,
Correct.
so we're not
doing that in this year.
Not going to do that this year.
No.
Are we done?
You kidding?
No.
Why are we
starting a generation?
So that,
was just something that fell off that we just decided to, we've been doing it
yeah,
every
that
year.
was,
Well,
that would have been approved under Gary. I don't know why he didn't include that in this next year.
Basically saving money this year, pushing it off into the future, and going to future budget.
Yeah, and there's some, there was some
Is it expensive?
higher,
Yeah.
well, we limited it, right? It was, what, 400 to
About
500,000, and right, we just,
For what, a 26-mile?
whatever we could do.
Oh, wow.
And now?
And so they identified some certain areas that were
So.
kind of higher priority.
No. I gotta go, I've never been
Like
up there.
painting the Golden Gate Bridge with
Yeah.
one of these fine artist brush.
All right.
Okay.
I'm gonna go see these.
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's skip down to, we're on page 4, down to section 13, raw water master plan. And so I'll give you a little update on the raw water master plan, and then we'd like to have a little further discussion with regards to the urban and ag water management plans. So, we do have draft documents, both the hydrology as well as the demand and the supply technical memorandums from HDR for the raw water master plan.
And that's basically the same information that's used in the urban and water master plan.
But yeah, and that's what we're gonna chat about here in a minute.
Sing in harmony.
Yes,
Yes, they do.
absolutely. And so, and with that, we also have our demand model. And what that demand model is it allows the district on a yearly or bi-yearly, or whatever we decide to do, to be able to manipulate and make changes to that model based on demands and growth that we see, and be able to recalculate that to make sure that, so when we start to look at some of these things, you know, every couple of years, we can go in and make adjustments to the demand to say, yeah, it hasn't gone up, or no, it's been this versus that. And we'll be able to do that internally. That'll allow us much better planning information as we move forward as to what facilities need to be upsized, upgraded, et cetera, both treatment plants as well as raw water facilities, et cetera. So the discussion we need to have has to do with the urban and ag water management plan. I think the ag water management plan is due in quarter 2, and the urban water management plan is due in quarter 3 of 2021,
Next year.
next year. A lot of the information that we're developing now for the raw water master plan is going to be needed or used as part of the urban and ag water management plan. Based on the schedule and the potential timing of the raw water master plan, we're getting ready to send out RFPs for the urban and ag water management plans to start that process. The information that we've been developing for the raw water master plan, the demand, the supply, the H&H, we're going to be utilizing those in the urban and ag water management plans. And so, Greg, jump in whenever you want. So the thought process is some of that information that would be daylighted with the raw water master plan is going to be daylighted now with the urban and ag water management plans. And that,
Okay, so which comes first? And what is the schedule?
Our regulatory framework for the urban and ag are such that we need to start working on those now. We don't have a chance, or we don't have an opportunity to go outside of April and June next year to deliver the urban and ag respectively, or vice versa. We know that's going to take a period of time to do. We've been developing a public outreach process for the raw water master plan, which we will bring to you, and it's already been to the WHO, and we're bringing it to the board on the 22nd. The consideration at this point with budgetary considerations and financial considerations, we know that raw water master plan outreach process is built at roughly $300,000 based on the board's considerations at the time. We also know that it takes a whole bunch of staff time to put that thing together. We believe that moving forward with the urban water management plan at the time and the urban management plan and the ag management plan right now is more appropriate for the short term, and we build into the raw water master planning process after the urban and the ag are complete, after June of next year, perhaps even into 2022.
So what you're saying is urban and ag, then raw water master plan.
Yes, sir.
It could also be the other way around.
Raw water first?
Yeah.
Well, that is true. However, we know for a fact that the raw water plan is not regulated. It's not a regulatory mandate.
So there's no deadline. I understand.
That is correct. And based on the considerations of the outreach plan that's currently coming to the board next week, that's at least a $300,000 outreach component plus staff time, which requires another staff to process. We're talking a pretty heavy plan for the raw water master plan process. The urban and ag plan isn't necessarily that much of a cost component, and it utilizes the data components of the raw water master plan that we'd be utilizing. And so at this point, this raw water plan, the idea is to move through the regulatory framework of the urban and the ag plans, put those on the table for another 5 years. And we invest in the raw water master plan. The data is the same data.
yeah, obviously the urban and ag have more specific guidelines and requirements on how we fill out and the information that we put in there. But again, the stuff that we're doing now is information that will be used in that document as well. And so,
We'll talk.
We talk, yeah, offline discussion, and I'm getting really strange.
okay.
Sure. Well, we're under a gun at this point. I mean, we do need to have these,
For urban, I understand.
Sure.
And I understand that's very prescribed in terms of the questions you answer, the tables you have to fill out, and so on. That it's all established in your regulations. So there's a lot of fill-in-the-blank information that what goes in the blanks has to basically follow what's in the law.
okay? Yeah. Well, we're, like we say,
We've been dancing around the subject for years, and there's been one delay after another. And so the concern in my mind is, when does the hydrology actually come out?
So the plan was to have it in the raw water master plan as,
2 years ago.
Right.
the current plan is to have it within the raw water master plan. And that process and the outreach and how that all comes out, right, in the potential review from a third party before that document goes out, et cetera.
Urban plan, if they're all seen.
right,
Yes,
We'll have
right, that's
a preview of
Yeah.
hydrology.
Yes.
in the Urban and ag water master.
that's correct.
these documents would be
The data would be out with the urban and ag plan.
correct.
So what's the problem with the plan then?
The which one?
The raw water plan? Are we doing the downscaling model, where we're gonna put with Stantec and USGS?
So we're gonna have that discussion, that's,
Is that one of the hangups? I mean, I'm trying to figure out.
There is a hang up there.
that was, but we're not sure that that's really something that we're gonna be moving forward with, and that's something that we're also gonna have to chat with the board with regards to that. And Jim would be a good one to have.
Yep.
In terms of that discussion, with regards to that scaling of the model.
I'm not sure if there's any public comment.
Oh,
There is a concern with the downscaling model that has been utilized and built by Stantec for that purpose, for the American River plan. And I don't know enough about it, but we can certainly talk about it on Wednesdays, that from what I understand about it is that our modeling is a daily projections, and the downscaling that has been used currently, the scale, is a monthly
scale.
process. And so we would be needing to basically redo the whole downscaling model that was done on the American River Basin to a daily timestamp, which is how our model has been built. And
They didn't have a daily?
apparently not. That's what I understand, right? Isn't that
Understanding.
That's what we understand.
All the statewide models are built on monthly timestamp. Daily is actually pretty unusual.
And that's where HDR, I think, has built our,
Yeah, that was using our existing model, right, or
Red and blue model.
red and blue model, and made changes and adjustments to that.
yeah. And so I think on further analysis of the Stantec piece, is that we recognize that those were a monthly model and ours is a daily. It's apples and oranges, and so there's a concern there. I don't know to the extent of what that concern is regarding the modeling and that particular element of downscaling modeling, but we know that we've built in scaling models for climate change into our model as well.
It may not be possible to convert the downscaling to a daily time.
Yeah, I think that's what, and Jim was the one that was looking into that, so he would be one that'd be able to give us a little better information, but he was looking into and contacting with Stantec to see about doing that.
Basically, you're forcing square peg into a round.
Yeah.
You're redoing the whole thing from scratch. So,
Very strange to me.
well, we do have the, like I say, we're bringing forth, we would have had it, I think, last month or the month before, but COVID kind of hit and we pushed off the presentation of the plan for water. We did it at the WHO, I want to say, in February or March, and we were going to bring that back to the board. So we're bringing it tomorrow, or next week, is that outreach component of the plan for water, which is the raw water master plan process. Recall that's the plan that we're asked to put together, a roughly $300,000 plan for an outreach component of the work. Now we're faced with moving into the place of the urban and the ag plan. So we can look at the cost. We know what the cost of the plan for water and the outreach component of the raw water master plan is. We can look at both of those together and all three of them together, and we can identify priorities. And maybe this is an offline conversation, but as we're looking at it now, it seems that we believe that the data that's going to come forth is the data that has been requested for a while by the board, by the community, by a lot of different constituents, and feel that we can move forward with the urban and ag plan, which are mandated to be done, and we can move this forward, but it might take more conversation.
What do you want?
Nothing, that was just an update.
We'll talk more.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. The Lake Wildwood and North Auburn water age evaluation, that's just consultants' comments being reviewed. That was just modeling the age of the water, see if we got any issues there with those systems. The next one on the item is Hemp Hill. So Tony, give a quick update on where we're at on Hemp Hill.
We've been working with Equus to refine the project alternatives. One of the things that we heard is that we should be giving consideration to a fish passage alternative. So we've talked to Equus about encompassing that in the study process. The impact areas that they'll be looking at is the same as an infiltration gallery, so they're able to do that. We're currently developing they're almost complete with developing the IS that will be released with the NOP. We're on track to release the NOP in September timeframe. We will keep our website up to date with that information, so as soon as that information is available, we'll post it on the website. They are starting to gather the troops, so to speak, to start doing the stuff on the ground, start doing some field surveys for the study areas for the infiltration gallery, for fish passage, for the pipeline alternative, as well as the discontinuation of service of the canal. So folks are going to go out there and do some field surveys for those, as well as some potential staging areas that we identified. We haven't talked to property owners, but we identify it as a potential staging area. And they'll be doing those evaluations from the existing right-of-way.
So that schedule allows us to meet court deadlines.
Pardon me?
That schedule allows us to meet court deadlines?
Correct.
Yes. And as part of the NOP, we're also going to be doing a scoping meeting. That's within the NOP, which will allow folks to be able to come in. Well, not come in, I guess it'll be a Zoom meeting or something to that effect, to be able to make comments, concerns, questions, etc. it's not necessarily a back and forth, but it's an opportunity for folks to give us additional feedback and information on what we should be considering or concerned about with regards to the potential projects.
So did we have to amend the E-Core contract to allow another alternative to be looked at?
We have not, no.
So
No, they're able to do it. They're able to do it under the existing contract, under the existing budget. One thing that we will have to take a look at is the fish passage alternative. We do have to evaluate the existing structure to see if it's viable to support the alternative. So we'll be doing some work with regards to that. That will not be covered under the E-Corp contract.
Are you going to be using this 2009 Mike Love? I mean, they did feasibility levels, and they did preliminary design, and
Yeah.
all the preliminary work is supposed to do to put something to sequence.
We took a look at the 2009 report from Windsor Kelly and saw that the 4 potential alternatives for a fish passage in that area. But that report does not take a look at the existing structure to see if it's viable to actually support building anything on top of it. We do have concerns about the structure. Over time, it has gone under some repair work. The existing structure is currently leaking. So we do need to take a look and look at that structure, see if it's viable to support it, if it requires removal or if it requires some sort of repair to be able to do a fish passage.
Or just an in-stream alternative.
Some sort of in-stream alternative, yes. Yes. And so that first step there is we're going to take a look at the diversion structure and answer that first question. You know, is it going to support something or does it require removal? If it requires removal, we'll have to talk about what kind of in-stream alternative would be viable there. One of the comments in a previous report that I've been trying to get my hands on that's reflected in that 2009 report is that CEFW was looking for something that was more natural in terms of a fish passage. So if we end up removing the structure itself, we can take a look at alternatives that may be a more natural alternatives than the ones that are presented in Windsor Kelly. We don't necessarily want to put the blinders on and just go forward with what Windsor Kelly has suggested if we end up having to remove the structure.
Sure, absolutely.
Or replace it.
Or replace it, yes.
Modify it or something.
Correct. Retrofit, et cetera.
Something like that.
Right.
And then also look at, you know, if we keep the existing structure and have an in-stream passage, we're also going to have to look at screening for our canal, right? As well as we've got issues with the embankments up above that structure failing. So we're going to have to be doing some riprap and rock work because of the artificial elevation in there causing some additional erosion on some of those private properties up above, right? So those are all things that'll be part of what we have to look at in terms of the alternative.
And did you do a feasibility level look at these roadway alternatives?
Yeah, in terms of, I mean, I guess maybe what's the definition of your feasibility? It can be done, right? It's pipeline in a roadway that goes from point A to point B.
Living a point of diversion with the water rights.
So there's 2 components to that, right? There's a pre-14 and a post-14 right that serves Hemphill. Pre-14 right doesn't require any specific process that has to be approved by the state board, other than we have to make sure that there's not an injury issue. And really that injury issue is being dealt with the fact that we're having to look at the environmental impacts of moving the water from point A to point B. The other component, which would be the post-14, would require a change petition to change the point of diversion to move it upstream. That would be part of that project.
How much water is associated with the pre-14 right?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Oh, 12 to 18 CFS.
I don't know. I don't want to say because I don't know specifically. So there's 2 components there to that. In terms of capacity in the AR1, the AR1 is designed at 88 CFS. Right now, the most we put in it is about 58 at peak in the fall. So there's capacity in there now. Ultimately, does it if demand of our raw water system truly increases over time, does that mean the improvements to the AR1 would have to happen sooner than it would have before? Absolutely. But that's still a lot of capacity sitting in that system, and the demand that we typically see in our raw water system. I mean, it's...
Well, the ability comes up with that, so there's
Mhm.
hopefully potentially
Sure.
a lot of customers.
But not 30 CFS worth, right? So yes, ultimately, by moving that water through that system, you've reduced its ultimate capacity as you move forward in the real world. Whether that's 20 years or 30 years or 50 years, having to do it in 20 years versus 50 years or 30 years versus 50 years, that's dependent on the demand and the potentials, right? But, yes.
And the same goes with everything.
Sure.
The best and everything, right? Depends on the demand.
Same with Hemp Hill, right? It's got a master plan of 18. I think we deliver about 12.
It's 8 deliveries.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the demand potential on the Hemp Hill is probably also relatively small, because it's
So I've
feeding.
heard it's 12, max 12, and I've heard it max 18.
I think the raw water master plan is 18.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
I think that's, our master plan is 18. Correct.
The other documents said a maximum of, the E-Core said a maximum of 12.
That may be what our max diversions have been through that system. Anyway, I'm almost positive, I'm 99% sure that the raw water master plan is 18 CFS,
Yeah, I've
right?
heard 18, and then I went in the E-Core, it says maximum 12. I thought, well,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So yeah, so some of those things have been considered, absolutely. That's part of the process. Yeah. But is there a formal
Considered a document.
document that was developed?
A text memo, I mean, it doesn't have any report, just a text memo.
No, so there was there's an alternatives memo that I had been asked to put together. We can send you a copy of that. It's real high-level stuff. Because I looked at using Lincoln wastewater treatment plant water. We looked at potentially using the Lincoln Canal and upsizing that. We looked at moving up to the AR1. We looked at potentially installing a reservoir to offset peak demands and to be able to continue to use.
All for Hemp Hill?
That was all the alternatives that I looked at and presented to the TAC at that last TAC meeting. I think it was the last one. I think it was the last one when I did the alternatives discussion. So, but again, they were all relatively high level stuff, right?
All right. I think we should convene the TAC to let them know what we're doing and what's going on.
So are you asking to reconvene and have continuous meetings with the TAC? Or are you talking like a one-time update meeting on what we're doing?
Where we're at.
Okay. Because my concern would be is if we redevelop or restart the TAC right now and continue on monthly meetings, is that we're having two public processes happening at the same time. And we're potentially having our agencies and the interested public that's part of the TAC being drafters and or decision makers within our CEQA process. And we don't want to do that. We need to have our CEQA process moving forward as its own thing. The TAC, I think, has real value and should be brought back for continuous type of setup once we determine how we're going to move forward, because the implementation of any project that we choose is going to have a ton of components that need input from all the agencies and all the NGOs and anybody else that's going to be involved with this project, right? So, absolutely, at that point.
Put a lot of effort into developing something. We could get an initial take on, these are the people that are going to have to regulate it, and these are the people that are going to have great impact, and if we got their ideas just going in, I think it would save us a lot in the long run.
Well,
Haven't we already done that?
do that with the TAC over the last...
Where we're at with...
I wasn't part of it,
It's been very,
but they were talked about different alternatives, right? And then they kind of focused onto the infiltration gallery was kind of the last...
We are in an agreement with an April 2021 deadline to develop a draft CEQA document, correct?
And then if it blows up on April 2021, because that's the first time people are seeing it,
Well,
and then...
it wouldn't be,
It's full, and it's an analysis, it's a CEQA.
so first they would have the NOP and the scoping meeting, so they'd be able to
Yeah.
provide comments and concerns and things we should consider. In the CEQA document, we'll have to identify those comments and respond to them. Then, by April 1st, which is the deadline, we'll have our draft document out. That's the opportunity to review it and make additional comments, concerns, etc. Then, we take that and move towards our final document that we would take to the board for consideration of adoption.
I mean, it seems like I'm looking to not just meet the April 21st deadline, I'm looking to get fish passage in that ravine ASAP. And so if we get to April 21st and find out, well, we got a lot more work to do, or this really, wow, this is
Well,
problematic. Just because we met that April 21st deadline doesn't get us any closer to actually...
No, but the CEQA document's gonna analyze these alternatives, and alternatives that, some of them you'll be able to, disregard is not the right term I'm looking for, remove them from additional consideration because they don't meet the project objective, or they're just, if somebody says we should remove it and install a desal plant to be able to feed it, right? That's like, okay, thank you for your comment, but that doesn't need to have any further consideration. We will have several alternatives that will require more detailed investigation. That will then come out and say, this is the preferred environmental alternative, or the least impacted alternative. There may be 2 or 3 other alternatives that went through the same full process. This one, the document says this one has the least impacts. Here's some other ones that we also went through the same process. The board then makes that decision as to which alternative it wants to utilize. And part of what it needs to be able to do, and we will have as part of the package that the board will be looking at, is cost related to these alternatives. The CEQA document can't look at a cost and say it's not the preferred alternative because it's cheaper. It can't do that. But the board can look at information with regards to these different alternatives and say, well, the preferred alternative costs 6 times as much as the next alternative, and we can mitigate this and this to a certain level. The board may decide with overriding considerations to take this alternative because it has the ability to do that. That's part of its authority. So we want to put together this document to have, which has these different alternatives that the board can then make their decision on.
So what Doug's getting at, if I can interrupt real quick, is just that within the CEQA document, typically there's not an economic analysis with each of these alternatives, right? It's just the best, highest effective environmental project. We're going to bring an appendix with the CEQA document that's going to have an element of cost analyses to the alternatives that are finally considered within the CEQA document, which is unusual, but knowing that the board is making the decision as to both environmental and the economics of them all, we're committed to bringing forth an economic valuation of each of the proposals, the projects that the consultant is going to put forth. Now, that's not to intend to influence the CEQA, predispose the CEQA output, but we'll know as the projects are moving forward through the CEQA process what those alternatives are looking to be, and then we've got some preliminary work on some of these cost estimates, and we'll have some cost estimates associated with the projects.
And as this process unfolds, there may be something that we don't know that says the pipeline alternative, there's a fatal flaw, there's some big concern or issue that doesn't even warrant it to continue on its process of being evaluated to the full level, right? So
Have we looked at taking 18 CFS out and that top 6.5 miles.
That will be part of what this document has to look at. It's gotta look at, it has to look at alternatives,
Yeah.
or the impacts of this alternative. And that is an impact of this alternative, is having that water diverted 6.5 miles further up. Absolutely.
Nick, do you have some?
I think there's certain wisdom in doing the economics analysis as a separate report. Under CEQA, you actually have to operate economics beforehand.
Yeah.
However, we are doing an EIR on this project, and that allows us to make overriding considerations. And so, the CEQA document may say that project A is the environmentally preferable alternative, but we have an economics document over here. And that allows us legally to override the CEQA document and adopt that alternative, which is economically most feasible. So that's why we do the EIR.
That's the process we are in currently.
The process
With
exactly the right process. So this really does need to be an EIR. If we were to do an initial study and do that, then we would not have that option.
We are doing an initial study.
So I'd like to clarify
But you
here.
basically follow it with an EIR.
Correct, that's exactly right, that's what we're doing. So we're releasing an initial study with the NOP at the same time. An initial study is letting the public know upfront, these are the areas of concern we'll be focusing on in the draft EIR.
So with the initial study, you had three choices. There are no impacts, project moves forward, or impacts and we're mitigating thus and so. Third option is, there are potential impacts, therefore we're doing an EIR.
Right.
So that's why we do it. So, of course, you always precede an EIR with an initial study. That's why we do an EIR.
And it just gives some additional information for the folks to be able to comment
And
during the NOP
It gives us
process.
additional options in choosing final alternatives.
So now we have 4 alternatives instead of 3.
Well, there's more than that.
There's more than that.
Even more than that, but
Well, the ones we're just investigate, we're attacking E-Core to investigate with E-Core.
and there may be other alternatives that we haven't thought of that will be given to us as part of the NOP process, right, that we'll have to consider and look at. There maybe there's something we haven't considered, or a lot of it's probably just gonna be iterations of a basic concept, right? It's a fish passage, there may be 3 or 4 different options in order to make that fish passage happen. So there's 4 alternatives, even though it's kind of within one.
Yeah, this has been going on since 2009, so it's just a little diversion dam. So I'm really encouraging us to, let's get something that we're going to be able to construct right away. And
I agree. We wanna move forward. Absolutely.
I would echo that sentiment.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's important, and it is on us and our consultants to make sure that you have the document with the information you need to be able to make the decisions that you need to make as we move forward.
Part of that.
And part of that will be that discussion. Okay, sediment removal. So, Adrian's working on that. He is looking at developing costs to do the bathymetry of our larger reservoirs. This is the study we talked about at the previous engineering committee, or the one before that, I can't remember. It was last one or the one before. Yeah. And so we'll get that, and then we'll start putting that study together. That's all going to be in-house, other than the bathymetry of the larger reservoirs. The small ones we'll be able to do with our survey crews. So we'll start to put that together. Part of, before I do a couple of these existing ones here, part of that discussion that the board wanted the rates committee to consider and staff to talk about is the potential, again, for capital to pay for some of the debt service. This is another program, at least for next year, that I would recommend that we don't do. I've got $1 million in this next year's budget to do this work. let us focus on the study, because I'm not sure that, like we talked about, putting pennies to the canal, by the time you get done, you start over. I'm not sure there's benefit in some of these, and so let us develop that study and figure that out and present that to the board so they can decide how they want to move forward with the sediment program. That's going to take us a little while anyway to do that study. So this would be one program, again, that I would potentially recommend that we not fund next year to be able to help pay for that debt service. I just wanted to point that out.
I have a question about this Ore Creek one, Ore Creek Reservoir. We've already done CEQA on it, and it was already a project that comes back to planning. And one of the big concerns that project was going to be addressing is that's where the Gold Hill Canal comes off of there, and it's literally duct tape and baling wire.
Yeah, that dam.
That dam diversion is really, really bad. And that previous project was going to fix this.
Right, there was two projects, right? It's cleaning the sediment out, and then it's redoing the dam.
Right, and that was what it was in that previous project. And so now we're back to planning. I mean, I don't know how much we spent on that one before we decided we didn't want to do that, but now it's the Gold Hill diversion, I guess I'll call it the Gold Hill Diversion Facility, for lack of a better, I don't know what you would call it, but that comes off of that old dam.
Dam,
And you have that walkway and that corrugated metal pipe that's just rotting. It's in really bad condition.
Correct.
Is that become a different project?
Yeah, so part of what has happened, right, is I've come in and said, we need to stop and reevaluate whether we need some of these facilities. So when we do that, and if we determine that this is the reservoir we don't need in terms of its capacity and its need to have the storage in it, then it becomes a project of just developing the diversion structure to be able to feed the canal. And whether it's removal of the facility, whether it's leaving it in place, handing it off to the neighbors if they want to keep it, I mean, those are things that we'll start to talk about in that study and the best way to do this. Maybe we come in and we decide to remove it. We remove that dam and we clean out that structure, reestablish that section of the creek, and just have a new diversion structure to be able to feed the canal.
And that's what this planning document is? Reservoir sediment study, conflicts and to determine validity.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about?
So that's what I'm talking about, this overall big one, which is looking at all of them, right? And then we can say, yeah, we think that this reservoir is not one that we need to move forward with in terms of maintaining it or sediment, et cetera, and spending the money and the effort to do that. Okay, so now let's figure out what we got to do with it. If we determine we don't need it and it's not worth us maintaining and dealing with it, we're going to have to do, we most likely won't be able to just walk away from it. We'll have to do something. Part of that would be the diversion to be able to make sure we can continue to feed the facility. Absolutely. Exactly. And whether that's maybe move it slightly upstream so that we then put it in some pipe and get it around the side so we can get it over there, get it off of the dam, et cetera.
Program, then that doesn't happen. And
No, it does.
The facility is delayed. I mean, not scrap it, but we do every...
So it would... It would, I guess in that sense, yes. This study needs to be able to give the board the information on whether we should or should not deal with it. And then once that decision's made, then we would move forward with how we're going to do that. And so that would be delayed why we do this overall study of the bigger projects in general.
Reservoir's in operation currently. This is just looking at the removal, sediment cost, dollar for dollar. How do you...
And
the dam structure itself is in very poor shape.
Yeah, okay.
Understand.
And so I'm not as concerned,
Concerned about whether that fails or something happens and we can't...
Diversion facility,
Yes.
I mean, that diversion, have you seen that diversion?
No.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, if something
That's the
happens...
only thing I've seen that's open, I've seen that.
If something happens tomorrow, we would have to deal with it accordingly, right? I mean, if that thing truly failed or had some kind of incident happen where it no longer allowed us to divert water in the canal, we'd have to run out there and do some emergency fix to do that. We would just have to do that.
And I would hope that moving forward in our practice, I mean, we've probably spent on this Ore Creek project $20,000 or more. I mean, we spent quite a bit of money, quite a bit of time, only to realize at the end of the day, I encourage that we do this higher level feasibility, look at things to make sure it makes sense before you just
Correct.
go down this rabbit hole, that's a lot of money.
Exactly.
And that's the fact, that goes back to Tim Hinto, I mean, we just need to look at everything first, and then we used to take a little bit of planning up front, we can save a lot of money, and a lot of time. So anyway, so I'm concerned about that diversion, but what I'm hearing is that if we put this on hiatus for a year, we don't put this program in the budget, then it'll be at least another year before we even consider that.
And I think it would be anyway, because to get the study done and to move forward and present that to the board and develop our strategy and plan of attack, I think we're in that boat anyway. Because it's gonna take some time to get those bathymetry work done and then to put all that together. So we're gonna be into next year by the time that study's ready to be discussed at the committee and then at the board. So I wouldn't see that it would.
Still consider item one, but.
Correct. Yeah, correct. And really, it's only the bathymetry part that's a outside district cost. Everything else would be internal.
Two and three are moving forward right now.
Yeah, so Loma Rica, we've just got some pile left over there off to the side that we just need to take and move to the airport and place it. And then the same with the new town. It's not pulling out new additional material, it's just dealing with some stockpiles that we have. And that's what those two are. And then the other one is, we did receive and I'm struggling with this one a little bit, we did receive the permit to do the trenching, to pull samples for the Greenhorn sediment. That's all those permits are for, is to go in there and make 3 trenches, pull some samples, and then backfill the trenches back in. Now we're in the process, if we want to, is to move forward with get the permanent permits, which would allow us to do actual excavation of the sediment, et cetera, which is a separate process. Yeah, that's what I was looking at, for the most part. You can also look at material to see what kind of material it is, whether there's some gradation, whether there's some benefits or usefulness of the material.
So this says Greenhorn is just reservoir sediment, steady cost benefit.
So this will be all part of the bigger scope that we're looking at. Right. But we've gone through the process of getting the permits to be able to dig a couple holes to pull material for testing only. So we'll probably go ahead and do that. What I'm questioning is, do we want to move forward spending money on obtaining the full permits, the final permits that would allow us a 5 or 10 year window to be able to excavate material out of there? That's the part I'm struggling with. Because I think one of the reasons I wanted to do that study was I'm concerned that the amount of money that we spent pulling material out of there is not money well spent for what you get out of it. And you got to pull a lot of material to make a dent in the capacity of the storage of the reservoir. I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars to reclaim Rollins. It doesn't.
Whenever you have a hole, you need the dirt.
And where
Have the dirt, you gotta look for a hole. That's where we're at with the combi work too.
It's the same thing, right? I mean, your cost per acre foot to recover that is $20,000 to $40,000 an acre foot.
Where it came from, so it can come down and
You
get.
can't even sell that much material.
We've done extensive testing on that material.
Pushing the rock up the hill, just
Keeps going up. But but it is kidding aside, I mean, it is something that some of the NGOs in the region have been, and we've thought about this too. There are holes in the ground that can be refilled and capped, potentially. And some of this material is valued at some point in time. There's an economics to it, and then at other points in time, there are no economics to it. And so it is this analysis of how much does it cost to remove, how much does it cost to get it out, and who's willing to take it. I mean, the combi, we're sitting there, we've got a 5 or so, 7 year window with our CEQA document. We should be going back in and redoing what we can. I'm not going to do as big of a project as we did before, but we can certainly get in there with bulldozers and excavators and backhoes in another 4 or 5 years, and we can make it work. We just got to...
What happened to the guy who wanted to buy that?
Oh. COVID and the economy and things changed, and we don't have that ability right now.
That guy backed out? Didn't we make a contract?
We did. There's an agreement to purchase it from us, but that's over with at the end of this month, and we still have roughly 35,100 yards. It looks great. 35,000 yards. It looks great. It's growing weeds, and you wouldn't know it. But
Part of the problem too, right? I mean, just Nevada and county and portions of Placer County just doesn't have the demand for that kind of material.
No.
Because of how you have to go and get it. I mean, if we delivered it to somebody, I'm sure they'd take it.
yeah,
But going and getting it and trucking it and bringing it back is,
$20 a yard to haul.
it's difficult to find the demand other than, you know, somebody with a pickup or something kind of thing. But it takes a long time to get rid of 30,000 yards with a pickup. So,
We still have an initial problem, so.
we do, and that's what we need to take a look at, right? I mean, it's a problem. It will continue to be a problem. It's how best to try to deal with that or to spend money to deal with that. That's really the question, right? So last one is ditch tenders. They finished that little ramp on the side for the ADA maintenance did, so I think all that work is done. I don't think there's anything else happening now with ditch tender's house, so that'll be taken off of this list.
Ready for rental.
As soon as you can open up restaurants again, maybe.
There's 11 people.
Yeah, have more people in a room.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Weren't we trying to get a wedding at?
We had a couple originally already scheduled, but
Sure.
I think have both pulled out.
Maybe.
I know one has for sure, I think the other one did too, but I don't
know either.
hold me that for gospel, but I know one for sure did. But yeah, now that things are closing back down again. Right.
That was the scramble to her, the kind of the wedding.
Mhm.
And now we don't have that.
Now it's done and it's beautiful.
No wedding.
Yep. So if there's no other comments, we'll see if there's any public comment at this point. Again, that's, looks like we got a hand for John.
Yeah, unmute, okay.
John, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Oh, I just had a quick question on the South Yuba Canal. How have you come up with maintenance cost estimates that could be used in planning documents for rate committee consideration?
So the short answer is no. Part of what I'm doing is with regards to the overall assessment of the existing facility and things that need to be done and improvements and capital projects that need to be developed. That will not be done before the time frame with regards to the rates committee. I mean, because of COVID and other things, this report probably won't be done till the end of the year, if not the first part of next year, because they won't even be doing their tunnel analysis until October-ish time frame. So no, it won't be available in the short term.
Well, for planning purposes, could you get information from PG&E to plug that in and then update it when you get more detailed information?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we can check with Keenan or Jacqueline with regards to the information they may have on current maintenance costs associated with it. I don't know how forthright and how much information we get with regards to what it costs to maintain the facilities from PG&E. Sometimes that can be difficult.
Well, I would imagine it's significant money involved here, so it would be useful to have that as at least for planning purposes.
Okay?
One other comment is during the discussions, Director Wilcox was inaudible most of the time, and I missed a lot of his discussion.
Uh-oh.
My apologies.
That's better. I can hear you now. I think it's when you lean back, I couldn't hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Not seeing any?
Nope.
Then, if there's no other questions or comments from the directors, we'll go ahead and close the engineering committee. And thank you.
Thank you for the detailed review.
Thank you.